Hello, ladies, and happy Thursday. I am jumping on with Dr. Georgeanne Freeman, who has joined us again. We had such a great chat last time, and I asked Dr. Freeman if she would hop back on, and she very kindly accepted to give us some more of her time. And we're going to be talking about hormones again today, but in a little bit of a different context. We're going to be talking about menopause and diabetes. And for those of you who missed my conversation with Dr. Freeman, it was about a month ago already. Dr. Freeman is a doctor of family medicine and osteopathic physician at the Freeman Medical Clinic. She has a passion for helping women really understand their hormones and get the support that they need as they move through the menopause transition. So thank you so much for joining us again today.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about menopause and diabetes, and just like understanding the link between the two. And I know that I think most women understand or have heard the term diabetes, but I was wondering if you could start by just explaining the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes for the women that might not understand that.
Yeah, you bet. I'm going to give y'all the same talk that I give my medical students. And I just had a new medical student yesterday that I gave this talk to that I love. So basically, type 1 diabetes means that you are dependent upon insulin from the outside world. So you need to give yourself shots of insulin because your pancreas is not making enough insulin or any insulin. It's usually a juvenile onset, but it can happen later in life. Not necessarily associated with being overweight. A lot of your type 1 diabetics are very thin, in fact. Type 2 diabetes there is a genetic predisposition for it, but it's usually a result of insulin resistance. So you're making insulin, but not enough, or it's not very efficient. And it's connected usually with central obesity. So type 1, usually almost always insulin dependent. Type 2 can turn into type 1, and you can end up needing to give yourself insulin shots if the type 2 diabetes gets very advanced. But type 2 diabetes is preventable, and it's treatable, and it's reversible. Type 1 is not. You're just genetically, you got type 1 diabetes. You can manage it well, but you don't ever get rid of it. You're born with it.
Mm-hmm. And type 1 is like the pancreas just doesn't produce insulin, correct? And so there's no sort of way around it. You just have to give yourself insulin shots for the rest of your life. Is that correct?
Some people make some insulin, but they can't. Okay. There aren't lifestyle changes that you can make, or you can't mindset your way into like a healthier pancreas to make yourself more insulin. Yeah, you're dependent on the insulin. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And before we go on, because I forgot to do this, for those of you that are joining us live, I do have a window open with my Facebook page, so I can see where everyone is. I can see that Raquel and Cassie and Kim have joined us. If you are watching, just put a live in the comments so that I can see you. And if you're catching this on replay, put a replay in the comments so that I know that you've seen this. And towards the end, if Dr. Freeman has some time, we will go over any questions that you have that I haven't covered. So just pop them in, and I will come back and check that, so that we can make sure that we cover everything. Okay, so coming back to diabetes, and I see someone just already, Raquel said, I've heard of insulin resistance. So clearly this is still I think everybody knows insulin resistance because I read about it all the time, and I'm so sort of like I guess is just part of my everyday lingo, but clearly for some women, this idea of insulin resistance is not necessarily part of their terminology, and they don't necessarily understand what it is. So can you explain, I guess, just how one develops insulin resistance and what happens there, just so that women understand how insulin resistance turns into type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, so my little cartoon that I do for the med students is about type 2 diabetes. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about type 1 diabetes. It's just a whole nother kettle of fish. So I'm going to break it down. The pancreas is a cute little organ that is on our left side of our bodies. And it has many very important endocrinological functions. And one of the functions of the pancreas is to initiate and complete metabolism. So I like to break it down to the simple terms of a Pac-Man game. When we eat food, whether it's protein, sugar, fats, all the different foods, right? And by the way, I love that Haley is a coach. I think having a health coach who can guide you through nutrition and movement is wonderful. And I congratulate all you women for investing in having a coach. I always have at least one coach in my life, whether it's for business, whether it's for something personal. There's just nothing can replace having someone who's a professional outside of you, because when you're in it and it's your own thing, even if you're a coach, you can't do it yourself. I have a friend who's a brain surgeon, and she likes to say, well, if I need a brain surgery, I couldn't do my own brain surgery. So I congratulate you all for investing in yourself by having a coach. It's great. Pac-Man, do you remember the little round things and then the little waka wakas? So yeah. I think of food as the little round things. So regardless of what foods you eat, at some point they're broken down into sugars. So think of the sugars as the little round circles all throughout your system. And then think of the waka wakas as insulin. So if your waka wakas are fast, they're going to gobble up those sugars and you're going to have a faster metabolism. In type 2 diabetes, one of two things or both happen to your insulin. You either aren't making enough, so these sugars build up as stored fat on your skeleton because you don't have enough waka wakas, or your waka wakas aren't very efficient. They're kind of slow moving. And this is what we see in insulin resistance. Your insulin just can't keep up with gobbling up the sugars. And so that ends up as stored fat on your skeleton as well.
Can I interrupt you there? Because that's something that I have talked to, I've talked on this topic before, but I think women, I think this is a really important point, because I think a lot of women think that only eating fat turns into stored fat. And what you're saying is that sugar can get metabolized into fat. And so that's just, I think that's a really important point for women to understand, is that when you eat, for example, a donut, and that donut gets broken down into sugar, if you have insulin resistance and your body can't handle that sugar then gets turned into fat, and that's what's going in your fat cells. Is that correct?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Haley. Fat is just a really horrible word for fats that we ingest, because fats don't make us fat. Sugar makes us fat. When we eat fats, it takes a long time for them to metabolize into these little circles. So when you eat fat, even if you have sluggish insulin, even if you have insulin resistance, or you don't have as many insulin molecules, it is more likely to get to metabolize these, the closer to sugar that you are, whether it's refined sugar like a donut or white rice, these heavily starchy foods, that overwhelms the insulin immediately. And so it just goes right to stored fats. So fat is the least type of food to make you fat. Protein is the second least. It's the second to last, quickest metabolized. Not good English. Yeah, really glad you brought that up. I wish the fats that we eat, there was a different word for it, because they're not making us fat.
And I think that's why women, well, I think most of us grew up in an era where fat was definitely demonized, right? Like the 80s and the 90s, it was demonized. But also, yeah, you're right. Like just the word, it's fat. And so we're obviously going to think that fat is immediately going to get stored as fat. Whereas in fact, yes, the body metabolizes fat in a very different way. And really the true culprit, like you just said, is the excess carbohydrates or the processed carbohydrates that the body just can't handle. So I love that.
And sugar doesn't give us any nutrition either. Sugar is inflammatory. It's dose-dependent inflammatory. We need fats so much because the myelin sheaths that create the neurons in our brains are nourished and built by fats. So when we eat fats, they cross the blood-brain barrier and they nourish our brain. Fats have a lot of function that help us. Sugar does not. Unless you're dying and you're cachectic and it could keep you alive in a horrible situation. But in our culture, don't kid yourselves, it has no nutritional value.
Yeah. Okay. At some point, I want to pick your brain about cholesterol, but let's focus on diabetes today and insulin resistance.
Let's have that be a third one.
Okay, so can we talk about the link between menopause and diabetes? So off the bat, does menopause increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes?
Absolutely. And it has to do with cholesterol, but I'm not going to turn it into a biochem lecture, I promise. Just suffice it to say that cholesterol is the building block of hormones. And when we go through menopause, and it starts with perimenopause, for most women, it starts in the early 40s, long before you quit having a period, and our hormones start decreasing. Hormones have a protective effect with nourishing the waka wakas, with nourishing the insulin, as they do for many of the activities that go on inside of our bodies. So we need to keep up with stretching, right? Because things get the myofascia fibers and the muscles get a little tighter. But as long as we keep moving, and I know you're really great about reminding folks to move, then you can feel good. You don't have joint aches. You feel fine. So it goes with the internal system. So yes, you are an increased risk for insulin resistance with menopause, but it, like type 2 diabetes, is manageable. It's reversible. It's something you can absolutely control with what you put in your mouth for food, mostly, to combat that.
The way that I've or what I've read, and I know there's more than one reason that you can develop type 2 diabetes, and we'll get into some of the lifestyle factors that play a role there. But for women, obviously, there's no way to prevent menopause. It's happening, and we talked about HRT when the last time we chatted. But I just want to clarify. This is my understanding, is that estrogen and progesterone help us maintain insulin sensitivity. And as we lose those hormones, our capacity to metabolize carbohydrates starts to go downhill.
Yes. And not only estrogen and progesterone, but testosterone also decreases insulin resistance.
Okay,
So
and is that because of the link between testosterone and muscle mass and the importance of muscle mass with regards to insulin sensitivity, or is it something else?
that it works in that way with converting fat to muscle, but it more has to do with the protective effect of hormones in general being cholesterol metabolites.
Okay, okay, I might need some explanation there. So like I understand the link, but I feel like there's something I'm missing there. So when you say cholesterol metabolites, like they produce, no, the cholesterol helps you produce them, right?
So cholesterol is the building block of hormones.
Yeah.
Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all are metabolites. They are breakdown byproducts of cholesterol in the body. Now, in menopause and for men in andropause, we put the hormones either, a patch, a cream, a shot. We put those into our body. So we're skipping that cholesterol stuff. But cholesterol breaks down to hormones.
Okay. Okay. I think I've got that covered. But basically the gist of it, without getting into all of the biochemistry, is that when you have less of those hormones, ultimately you become more at risk of developing insulin resistance and therefore type 2 diabetes, especially if paired with lifestyle factors that don't help, I'm assuming.
Yes, and then there's this step between perimenopause, menopause, decrease in hormones. There's a gap between that and type 2 diabetes. Not everyone going through menopause is going to develop type 2 diabetes, but this insulin sensitivity is what gives so many women the fat around the abdomen, that central obesity, that's so hard to get rid of, because all the sit-ups in the world aren't going to do it, because you're just depositing all this fat. Your body just is overwhelmed with it because it doesn't have what it needs chemically or hormonally to metabolize that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I often tell my clients is that when you understand how your chemistry, your hormones, your metabolism is changing, you can make changes to your nutrition and to your lifestyle to address those metabolic changes and mitigate the belly fat. I think we're all going to put on a little bit of belly fat, it's just part of aging. But I think that if you continue to do what you did in your 30s, as you move into your 40s, and you're not addressing the increase in insulin resistance, you will have way more belly fat or central obesity than if you address it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the, when you're talking to your patients about the development of type 2 diabetes, what are some of the lifestyle factors that can increase your risk?
So you're at increased risk if you're overweight. That is the number one factor for developing type 2 diabetes. When you just have too much, it's just not like an unhealthy amount of stored mass on your skeleton increases your risk for type 2 diabetes, because the pancreas just gets overwhelmed. It doesn't have enough wackas to keep up with all this food that it's processed. That is far and away the number one risk factor. Genetics do play a part, but it's one of those medical things that doctors love because it can be so improved with lifestyle. Also medication. So one of the questions you had was, how does metformin work? Metformin is derived, it's an ancient medication, and I love anything natural. I said this on our last call. I recognize my bias towards the natural world, even sometimes if there's evidence to the contrary, but I will come clean if I'm aware of the evidence. No evidence to the contrary that I'm aware of on this. So many, probably over 100 years ago, some scientist figured out that this plant that grows in France if you, back when they were, they would have the mortar and pestle and grind stuff up, and that was medicine. That helped people with this type 2 diabetes. Of course, the word diabetes hadn't come around yet, but they noticed it helped people be more healthy who were overweight. So that is metformin. Metformin is made in a pharmacy. Yes, it's a chemical compound, but it's the chemical compound that's derived from this French plant. It is incredibly well tolerated and almost 100% safe. The only negative from metformin is that it can give some people some gastrointestinal upset. But I find that when I get my patients off of sugar and onto more fat, that then when we try the metformin again, it's able to work. So metformin is considered an anti-aging medication. So even my patients, myself included, who are doing any anti-aging protocol, even if they don't have insulin sensitivity, I used to, but I don't anymore. I put them on metformin because it is a longevity drug. And I think probably because as we get older, our risk of developing insulin resistance continues to rise. So being on that metformin can be preventive. So metformin,
and since you're talking about metformin, what can you explain the difference between metformin and berberine? And my understanding is that they're both very effective and they actually work very well together as well. Just wondering your thoughts on that.
Berberine has not been well studied. There's no scientific evidence I'm aware of, so I won't speak to that. I don't recommend it. It may be wonderful. It's outside of my bailiwick. But metformin, because we already talked about the pancreas, metformin nourishes the beta cells that are in the pancreas. This is how it works. So metformin does two things in the pancreas. It makes the insulin that you do have more efficient. And in some people, it actually increases the amount of insulin that gets pushed out. So some people will lose weight just by taking metformin because if they were really sluggish with insulin, all of a sudden their metabolism is like becoming normal.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. I mean, I knew that it was commonly prescribed, but I didn't necessarily understand how it, like what the action was inside the body that it took. So, and it's one of the main things it does is it keeps your blood sugar levels low. Is that, do I understand that correctly, or is it not quite that?
Yes. And how it does that is by metabolizing food. So at the end of the day, blood sugar levels get high when you have too much food that has turned into sugar and not enough of this happening, right? That's how it works.
So it's almost like it's just making the whole process more efficient.
Absolutely. Okay. And it's the first line drug for diabetes. It can't lower your blood sugar too much, which is also lovely. So there are all kinds of drugs out there that speed up your metabolism that we prescribe for diabetes, insulin included, that have the caveat of potentially lowering your blood sugar too low, which can cause coma and can cause death. Metformin can't do it. It's such a smart drug. It's only going to do what your body needs, and then it just gets peed out through your kidneys.
Oh, interesting. Because that's one of the sort of, I guess, negative side effects that I've read about berberine is that it's so effective. This is what I've heard and read, is that it can be so effective that it can also cause hypoglycemia, which is not an ideal situation. So I didn't realize that about metformin. So that's really cool. Thank you for that. So what are some action steps if a woman is in her 40s and she is in perimenopause and she's, ideally sort of starting to think about menopause is approaching. What can I do right now to set my body up for the easiest transition, to maintain my health, to maintain my metabolic health specifically, and really just like do my best to prevent insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, what are some action steps for the perimenopause woman?
I think that whenever the thought comes into any woman's mind, I wonder if I'm having a hormonal shift, or what am I going to do when I start having hormonal shifts? I think that when that comes into your brain, that is the time to find a doctor who's a good fit, get some labs done. We can check insulin levels. It's super simple. We can screen you for diabetes and insulin sensitivity. We can check your hormone levels, and it's really fun to go ahead and get a baseline and then follow that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
know where you are. And then as far as action steps for, do you mean like diet?
Yeah, I'd love to jump into diet and lifestyle, but I just want to just expand on that for a second, because I think that's so key. And it's something that I tell my clients, and I'm pretty sure I've said it in this group before, that it makes, you know, if you're looking at your blood work and like get tested, like you said, like, you know, find out what your insulin resistance levels are at the moment, but look at the trend over time to see if you're headed in the right direction or the wrong direction. And I think that's super key. And if women can understand how to at least read their trends so that they can see, like, okay, my blood sugar levels, my fasting blood sugars and my fasting insulin are actually worsening with time. If I don't make a change now, yeah, I'm going to end up with pre-diabetes, potentially type 2 diabetes. And so that just watching that trend and having a baseline when you're like, say, 40 or 42 or 43, having at least a baseline so that when you're 47, 48, you can look like, are you trending towards metabolic health or metabolic disease? I think that's so huge. So thanks for bringing that up. That's awesome. Okay, yeah, let's talk about nutrition. Like when you have clients that come to see you, do you provide any guidelines with regards to their nutrition as to what they might be able to do to get a handle on their insulin resistance?
I'm not a nutritional coach. Someone like you would be a better choice to have a nutritional coach, but I am a mindset coach, and I coach women on emotional eating. So most people who are overweight and I speak from personal experience. I came to this from being a morbidly obese human being, to no longer. And I feel so much better. So I am very compassionate and very passionate to help women, first of all, peel away the shame of being overweight, and then get into, okay, but like, why are you overeating? And it is almost always emotional. So we could put people on a perfect diet, but they're going to fall off the wagon and gain the weight back if they don't do the mental work, you know, this of getting into why they're emotionally eating and getting those emotions satisfied by some other way that doesn't involve eating or drinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I that's huge. I often tell my clients, and I talk about mindset quite a bit here, and just say, like, it's the basis of change, because if you don't have the right mindset, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, you won't implement it consistently enough to get the results that you want. And yes, emotional eating is definitely, you know, it's a big coping mechanism for a lot of women, because they don't have another outlet to deal with those emotions. So we'll have to get you on and talk about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if there was anything else that I wanted to cover. Yeah, and you said, and that's another important thing that I would love for you to speak on. I talk with a lot of women, you know, that are interested in getting coaching for weight loss. And when women have type 2 diabetes, I get a little bit of a sense that some of them think that they are stuck with it for life.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying that it can be reversed with the right habits and potentially some, assistance from like metformin or stuff like that. So can you just kind of expand on that? Because I want women to understand this. If they have already been diagnosed, I want them to understand what does that mean to them?
Yes. And I'd like to start, if I may, with a question that you had on your list that you sent to me. I love this question. And I think this might be a good time to talk about it. What are the health consequences of developing type 2 diabetes? Like, why is this a problem? This is a problem because when you have diabetes, type 1, I know we're not going to talk about you, but you're here. When you have diabetes, you flat out are at a higher risk for having a heart attack, for having a stroke, for having neuropathy, which means losing the ability to feel as well in your fingers or your toes. And guess what else is far away from the heart? Your penis, if you're a male, and your clitoris. So your orgasms are not going to feel as good. You're going to lose sensation, and you lose sensation first in the places furthest away from, I said from the heart, I didn't mean that. That would be circulation, blood circulation, from the nervous system. The nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. So anything the furthest out from that is going to lose good nerve conduction first, and then it's going to come proximal from that. So we all want great orgasms. We all want to feel our fingers and our toes, so that if we step on a splinter or put our hand and get a cut, we need to recognize that and deal with that and handle that. And folks with type 1 or 2 diabetes who have neuropathy, when they come into the clinic, we have them remove their shoes and their socks every visit. We look between their toes. I won't go into the things that I've seen on people's feet and the horrible contusions and abrasions that end up getting infected. You can have really bad consequences from that because they don't have that feedback to their brain on the sensation.
Yeah.
Type 2 diabetes is linked to an increased risk in Alzheimer's. I think, and this is me thinking, I have no scientific evidence to back it up, but to me, it makes sense that this is because of sugar overload, because I think that it is possible. And again, it's just my opinion, but I think it's possible that Alzheimer's and some of these other immune disorders are either caused by or certainly exacerbated by sugar.
Have you ever read, what's it called? Oh, I was showing it to my mother-in-law last week, and I can't remember where I put it, and I can't remember the author, but it's called The Brain System or something like that. And the author who wrote it, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but the author who wrote it, he theorizes that the reason that women experience hot flashes is because of insulin resistance in the brain. And what he says is that the brain becomes insulin resistant, and therefore we can't get sugar to the brain cells. And so the brain cells freak out and they send this hot flash as like a warning. And so this is his claim, is that it's associated with insulin resistance. And interestingly enough, with a lot of my clients, when I shift them into a lower carb approach and we eliminate the sugar and we focus on vegetables and what I call smart carbs, like high fiber, slow digesting carbs, they see a reduction in their hot flashes. So I don't know, but I'm curious if you've ever heard that. Or
I haven't heard that, but it makes absolute sense to me. And I don't really care what the exact science is behind it. I have the same experience when women start eating healthier. Of course, for me, it's mostly I put them on the hormones. The hormones stop their hot flashes. But sometimes it's just people, maybe they've had breast cancer, or for whatever reason they don't want to do hormones. But yeah, you get them off of that, some of that, or so much of that refined sugar, their hot flashes do decrease. So, I mean, he may be right.
Yeah,
But regardless, we
like
want
this.
people off of sugar. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got this hot flash cocktail that's like flaxseed oil and MCT oil I can't remember. I feel like there's another one, and he gets you like he's like, you know, have like 2 shots a day or whatever, going back to the healthy fats, bringing them to the brain and nourishing the brain. And so I'll send you the link to the book because you might want to check it out. It's interesting.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if there are any questions that have popped up. I'm just going to refresh my browser too, so that I can see if the ladies have popped anything in there.
So I hope it's helpful to anyone out there who has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes to know that it is reversible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think I know that I don't know if things have changed, but I remember when I first started getting into better understanding hormones and diving into like functional nutrition, and I started like following different functional practitioners, and what I heard a lot is that maybe in the Western medicine there's maybe a lack of belief that it can be reversed. Is that still true? Is that gone? Are all doctors in agreement now that you can reverse it, or is that still a little bit of a controversial topic?
It's not controversial. It's indisputable. Doctors know that diabetes is reversible, but in the United States, in the sick paradigm, which is what health insurance is, and I took insurance at this beautiful clinic that I have that I'm sitting in right now. I took health insurance for almost 12 years. In the sick paradigm, where you have 15 minutes per visit, you're prescribing metformin and you're telling people to move more and eat less, which doesn't work for 99% of people.
Nobody heard that.
But it gets them out of your door.
Yeah.
So it's not that they don't know. It's just that the United States system and people relying on health insurance for primary care, which was never the intent really of insurance, and insurance shouldn't cover primary care, I don't think, because now people expect to get all this knowledge and all this information from a system that is set up to only treat you when you're sick and do it very quickly. So that's why you're seeing more doctors like me who are doing functional medicine, not taking health insurance, because it takes time.
Yeah.
And this is fun, and this is going to help a lot of people. But when you boil it down, each person is different with their own metabolism, their own insulin needs, their own hormonal journey, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that, I love that you've moved into functional medicine, and it's the way I see functional medicine is it's kind of addressing the root cause as opposed to applying a band-aid. And so I think that is super awesome. So let's see, does anybody have, I know most women today were planning on watching the replay. There was a lot of ladies who wanted to get the recording. My goodness, the sun just came out. A lot of ladies wanted to get the recording, but for those of you that are watching at the moment, do you have any specific questions for Dr. Freeman about diabetes that we can quickly look at right now? I mean, I know we've already covered a lot, which has been amazing. I'm just going to refresh again and see if anything comes up here. And I'm sure once again, Dr. Freeman, I feel like we'll,
Josh,
as women start watching.
Can you do me a favor and bring me one copy of Dr. Fung's book and one copy of the intermittent fasting book? Just one copy of each of those books that we saw. Oh. Yeah, and I
love that you talked about Dr. Fung.
Yeah,
I
want to share with y'all the only 2 books we sell here in the clinic, because I just recommend them all the time. They're available on Amazon. Sometimes people just don't want to deal with that, so we save them the step. But available anywhere. These 2, my favorite books, and they they explain how type 2 diabetes is reversible and how to do it. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
I knew you'd be a fan of Dr. Fung. So
yeah, I've got that one.
this is the Bible for those of us who are weight loss coaches. It breaks down the science. It's not the biggest book. It's not the smallest book. Even I, as a physician, and I have a master's in public health, so I get really excited about epidemiology and statistics. Some of this will put you to sleep, but just, skim over those parts or let it help you with your insomnia. But all the gold is in there. And then for
got that one too.
gosh, it's so great. Yeah.
It's a really good analogy. My favorite analogy in that book is how he kind of explains how energy gets stored in the freezer, and how fasting, how there's like the fridge and then the freezer, and how intermittent fasting gets the food out of the freezer. I think it's such a great analogy. So yes,
that is a great analogy.
Those are very good. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, I don't, one question came in. Can you totally get rid of insulin resistance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've had clients, I had a woman come through my program about a year and a half ago. And I put her on sort of my protocol again, lower carb, more fat, more protein. And her doctor, when she first explained the protocol, he was like, your cholesterol is going to go up, like this isn't a healthy approach. And then she went to see him 6 months later, and her blood sugars were normal, her cholesterol was down, and he was like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. So it's so that's it's really cool to see that.
So yes, doctors are trained that type 2 diabetes is reversible, but here's what we don't get in medical school and we don't get in residency. We don't get the science that has been around for decades. All that science was buried by the big food industry, by the snacking industry that got us hooked on sugar instead of fats in the 80s and the 90s. All that also affected medical education. We did not get that in med school. That's how I got fat, because I drank the Kool-Aid. I did everything they told me. Eat 5 or 6 small meals a day. Well, guess what? If you just keep eating every few hours, your insulin can fall asleep, because it doesn't need to work. So it's like, she's going to feed me in 3 hours. I might as well lay back and smoke a cigar. I don't even need to get off the couch. I'm just hanging out. What we learn, right, is that you have to rest your pancreas at least 4 hours between feedings if you want to get into that freezer and pull that stored fat out.
Absolutely. Yeah. A big thing I do with my clients is I eliminate all snacks. We get rid of snacks. We do 3 meals a day. We shorten the eating window. Yeah. And it just, it helps. It really does. So,
well, God bless you. God bless you for doing this work. And I want to apologize on behalf of the medical community. I know I wasn't a cause of it, but the medical establishment, the medical community does a lot. We do a lot of really good work, but we have failed people in nutrition, in hormones. We don't get educated on that. So if a doctor is interested in that, she has to really actively go out and seek it. But it is really fun and exciting once you find it. It's like, okay. Well, yeah, right. They were just the people who taught me were wrong, and they're human. They are fallible. And I look forward to a time when medicine, which moves at a glacial pace, catches up, and then the new doctors in training will know that this is the actual science.
Awesome. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else. I think we have covered it all. And we've already been chatting for 45 minutes. So I'm gonna jump off the live. And if you are watching and you on replay and we haven't answered your question, please just post it in the comments. If you enjoyed this chat, can you please give a big heart, just give me a heart, give me a thumbs up, say thank you to Dr. Freeman for being here. Dr. Freeman, I'm going to get you a copy of this as well. And thank you so much for being here, ladies. Dr. Freeman, I'm going to catch up with you, but I'm going to stop this live stream here. And and also I just wanted to, before we go, I am going to also grab, oh my gosh, the sun is in my eyes. It's crazy. Can I see this? I'm going to put the link to Dr. Freeman's clinic in the chat on the Facebook Live. And then, do you have like a social media account or anything? Like, do you have like a social media presence? Where do we find you if we want to kind of follow along?
Yes, I have an Instagram account. It's Downtown Doctor ATX. My clinic is in Austin, Texas, and we refer to Austin as the ATX. So Downtown Doctor ATX. I do lives on there. I post a lot of good free medical advice and coaching advice on there. So that's a fun one to follow. And then on Facebook, I think on Facebook, we're also Downtown Doctor ATX. If that's wrong.
Okay, perfect.
But
I will definitely post both of those in the comments for anyone that wants to follow Dr. Freeman. There's a lot of thank yous coming in. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Very informative, very informative. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Hearts, hearts, hearts. So, and I know more will come in because women will start watching the replay. So again, ladies, thank you so much for joining. I'm sure we can convince Dr. Freeman to come back. And I'm going to stop the live stream and I will see you all very soon.